moment I stepped into the room, a thrill ran through me. Streamers and balloons shimmered under the warm yellow lights, and every table was perfectly set, ready for the night I'd been dreaming about for months, my bachelorette party. Family, cousins, friends, everyone I loved was there, laughing, sipping champagne, chatting like nothing could go wrong. But deep down, a tiny voice whispered that tonight might not be as simple as it seemed. Music floated through the air, a mix of soft background beats and upbeat remixes that kept the energy alive. I smiled at my friends, sharing their joy, but I couldn't shake that little twinge of nervousness. This was my night, the celebration of the next big step in my life, yet part of me stayed alert, scanning the room. Old memories, past betrayals, all those little things I'd experienced before. They reminded me that nothing is ever truly perfect. And then I saw her, Kami, Elijah's longtime friend. I'd always called her his best friend, but honestly, their relationship had always been complicated in ways I couldn't quite define. They'd never been anything more than friends. But the way she looked at him, now the small smile, the subtle tilt of her head made my stomach knot. She walked in, her hair gleaming under the lights, lips curled in a polite but slightly forced smile, and a shiver ran down my spine. Something about tonight. I just knew it was going to change everything. I tried to push the feeling aside. I wanted to enjoy this night. I joined in on light-hearted drinking games, laughed at silly stories, and clinked glasses with cousins and friends. The room buzzed with energy, yet I couldn't stop noticing Kami. Every now and then, she leaned toward Elijah, laughed at something only he said, and for a split second, her gaze lingered in a way that made my nerves flare. I forced a smile, reminding myself, this is my night. Stay calm. Don't overthink it. Ava, my best friend, noticed my unease. She had this uncanny ability to read people, to sense what was happening beneath the surface. When Kami moved closer to Elijah and started chatting, Ava rested her hand lightly on my shoulder and whispered, "Just watch. Don't stress. We've got this." I nodded, took a deep breath, and tried to refocus on the celebration. The party continued. Music, glasses, clinking but beneath the joy. I could feel it, a subtle tension in the air that made every glance, every laugh, every gesture feel charged. Kami's presence was like a ripple on still water, small, almost imperceptible, yet enough to disturb the calm. Then it happened. As I bent down to adjust my dress, I caught a snippet of her conversation with Ava. It was hushed, almost secretive. Her words carried something more than casual chatter: jealousy, longing, maybe even regret. My old instincts, the ones I'd spent years learning to control, flared up. I felt a surge of protectiveness, the part of me that refuses to let anyone mess with my happiness or my relationship. I stood there, heart racing, trying to keep my expression neutral. Everything else, the laughter, the music, the glowing lights, faded into the background. In that moment, I realized tonight was going to be different. I forced a smile, raised my glass in a casual toast to Elijah, and made polite conversation with Kami. But inside, I stayed alert. I knew this night, which was supposed to be all about celebration, was about to become a stage for secrets, hidden emotions, and challenges I hadn't expected. I took a deep breath and reminded myself, tonight, I'm not letting anyone ruin this for me, but I'm not ignoring the signs either. With that, I stepped back into the room full of laughter, lights, and excitement. unaware that the next moments would test everything: my patience, my trust, and the very foundation of my happiness. The bachelorette party was still in full swing. Music pulsed through the room, a mix of soft background tracks and upbeat remixes that kept everyone moving. I held my champagne glass, trying to blend in, laughing along with friends. But every gesture and glance in the room didn't escape my notice. Camille was standing close to Elijah, chatting, leaning in to laugh at something only he said. And there it was, against something about the way she looked at him that made my stomach twist. My heart started racing. I told myself, stay calm. Tonight is your night. Don't let your emotions run wild. I tried to focus on my friends, to participate in the games, to keep smiling, but the tension under the surface was palpable. And then it happened. As Commie and Ava leaned close in conversation, Commie's voice floated just enough for me to hear. It should have been me. Time seemed to slow. My heart thudded violently. My whole body went tense, like a cord pulled too tight. I froze. Everything around me, the laughter, the music, the clinking glasses faded into the background, leaving only those words echoing in my mind. Part of me wanted to rush over, demand answers, yell, "What do you mean by that?" But reason and self-control held me back. Family, cousins, friends, everyone was around. Any rash reaction now would ruin the party and make a scene I couldn't take back. I inhaled deeply, forcing myself to stay calm. Ava noticed the tension etched on my face. She's always been able to read people perfectly, knowing when to intervene and when to step back. She lightly placed a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Stay calm. Just watch. We'll handle it later." Her voice was gentle, but firm, like a shield protecting not just me, but the fragile energy of the night. KMI wiped at her face and stepped back, as if accepting Ava's guidance. A part of me relaxed slightly, but another part of the part that had been trained to be vigilant remained on high alert. Questions began to flood my mind. Why did she say that? It should have been me. What exactly did she mean? Had she ever truly had feelings for Elijah? Was there something I didn't know? I realized that all the answers would have to come from Elijah himself. Kami left. I followed at a safe distance, subtly guiding her toward the door. Outside, the crisp night air brushed against my skin, calming some of the tension coiling in my chest. I watched her slump slightly, her posture a mix of embarrassment and regret, and thought, I won't confront this right now. But tonight, everything has shifted. After Kami left, I pulled Ava aside. I heard everything, I whispered. She looked at me, guilt flickering in her eyes, and suggested calling Elijah immediately. I shook my head. No, let him calm down first. We'll handle this step by step. Ava nodded, understanding that I needed to process my emotions before dragging Elijah into the chaos. Back inside, the party carried on as if nothing had happened. But I couldn't take my eyes off every little detail, every glance, every gesture, every laugh. I smiled and laughed along, but inside, I felt a storm brewing. Each laugh, each raised glass, each shared joke, everything was under my scrutiny, analyzed for hidden meanings and unspoken truths. I asked Ava quietly about the past between Kami and Elijah. She reassured me. There's nothing. Their families used to joke when they were kids that one day they'd be in-laws if Elijah married Kami, but it never happened. Elijah never felt that way about her. A temporary sense of relief washed over me, but my instincts stayed alert. I knew I couldn't ask more questions now. Elijah would provide clarity later. I settled onto the sofa, sipping my warm tea, watching the party continue around me. Everything looked perfect on the surface, but beneath it, a quiet instability simmered in my mind. Scenarios spun rapidly. Was this just a misunderstanding? A moment of emotional confusion? Or something deeper that neither Elijah nor I had recognized? My heart raced between excitement and dread. I remembered Elijah once saying he never had romantic feelings for Carmi, that she had always been just a friend. But now, those words felt tested by her actions tonight. This party, meant to celebrate me and my upcoming wedding, had become a test of trust, patience, and emotional resilience. I stood and walked around the room, greeting people, clinking glasses, trying to keep a facade of normalcy. Beneath it, a whirlwind of emotions, confusion, vigilance, fear raged inside me. Elijah would answer these questions eventually, but for now, I needed to wait. Looking at Ava, I felt gratitude. She wasn't just my best friend. She was my anchor in this storm. Her calm presence gave me strength, and I knew that with her by my side, I wouldn't face these secrets and challenges alone. The bachelorette party, which had seemed like a celebration, had subtly transformed into a complex stage. Emotions, trust, and vigilance were all being tested. I took a final sip of champagne, glanced at the glowing lights, and reminded myself, tonight isn't just a memory to celebrate. It's a challenge, and I will come through it stronger. I knew this was only the beginning. Unrevealed secrets, unsaid feelings, and critical decisions were waiting ahead. I inhaled deeply, lifted my glass once more, and braced myself for whatever came next. After Carmi left, the bachelorette party carried on as if nothing had happened, but for me, everything had shifted. Laughter, upbeat music, clinking glasses, they continued around me, yet inside, a restless tension had settled. Every glance, every gesture seemed to carry a hidden meaning I had to decipher. I sipped my warm tea, forcing calm into my body, but the image of Carmi bending down, wiping her eyes, and whispering, "It should have been me," kept replaying in my mind. My heart ached, a mix of disappointment and simmering anger, but I knew I couldn't let it show. A public outburst now would ruin the night, undoing all the celebration and joy around me. Ava noticed the tension, etched on my face, and gently rested her hand on my shoulder. She didn't need words. Her steady gaze alone gave me reassurance. In that moment, I felt grateful she was my anchor, the one person I could lean on to keep my composure. I tried to blend back into the party, laughing with friends, joining in the little games, yet my thoughts kept returning to Elijah and Carmi. Was Carmi really jealous, regretful, or was there something between them that I didn't know? The questions gnawed at me, spiking my anxiety. When the games paused for a break, I pulled Elijah aside into a quiet corner. "I need to tell you what happened. I heard Carmi say something." My voice was low, trembling slightly. He stayed silent, listening, nodding for me to continue. I told him everything. Carmi's words, Ava's reaction, and the chaos I felt inside hearing that phrase. Elijah listened carefully, frowning at times, then taking a deep breath and squeezing my hand. "There's nothing between Carmi and me," he said, voice steady and unwavering. "It's just a long-term friendship. I've never had feelings for her. None of this changes us." Even with his reassurance, my unease didn't vanish. Komi's presence lingered in my mind, and I knew the night wasn't over. I had to stay calm, keep the celebration intact, but deep down, I felt everything had subtly shifted. Returning to the party, I forced a smile while keeping subtle watch over Elijah. He seemed tense too, though he tried to appear composed. Ava stayed alert at my side, a comforting presence, ready to catch any hint of trouble. I felt a sense of safety at least. I wasn't facing this alone. Every small moment suddenly felt significant, the warm glow of lights reflecting on faces. Casual laughter, gentle touches all, were analyzed and noted. This night was no longer just a celebration. It had become a test of trust, patience, and emotional strength. I remembered how Komi leaned in to speak to Ava, her eyes a mix of hesitation and challenge. Was she truly remorseful, or hiding something deeper? Even with Elijah's reassurance, I knew I needed to confront my own feelings first, before facing Komi or anyone else. As the night progressed, the soft lighting cast subtle shadows across the room, revealing layers of emotion, joy, worry, and unspoken secrets. I took a deep breath, lifted my champagne glass, and reminded myself, tonight isn't just about happy memories. It's a challenge, and I'll get through it. A sense of determination settled in me to protect my happiness, control my emotions, and not let anyone ruin this bachelorette night. Hidden secrets, unspoken feelings, and critical decisions still awaited. Every laugh, every touch, every offhand comment became something to note, something to read between the lines. The party, seemingly perfect, had transformed into a delicate battlefield where every glance and word could shift the balance. I felt the weight of every detail, from looks to gestures, smiles to whispers, each potentially revealing a hidden truth. I knew Elijah would ultimately clarify everything, but in the meantime, I had to stay composed. I rose, walked the room again, greeted people, raised my glass, keeping up appearances. Inside, a storm of emotions raged: confusion, vigilance, and a touch of fear. Looking at Ava, I realized she wasn't just my best friend, she was my most reliable ally. She stayed alert, knowing when to act and when to hold back. I felt safe with her by my side. I sipped my champagne, inhaled deeply, and braced myself for whatever came next. The bachelorette party, which had seemed like pure joy, had now turned into a subtle challenge, testing emotions, trust, and vigilance. I closed my eyes briefly, grounding myself. I won't back down. This is just the beginning, and I'll face whatever comes my way. The bachelorette night continued under the warm, golden glow of hanging lights, reflecting off every smiling face and shimmering champagne glass. But for me, the atmosphere had completely changed. Every laugh, every word, every gesture felt heavy, loaded with unspoken meaning that I couldn't ignore. I could sense a subtle yet undeniable shift. Tonight was no longer just a celebration. After speaking privately with Elijah, I felt somewhat reassured. He had confirmed there was nothing between him and Kami, that their relationship had always been just friendship. But despite his reassurance, I couldn't shake the unease, the anxiety gnawing at me. I knew Kami's words and actions tonight had planted a seed of doubt, and that the truth would eventually surface. Returning to the party, I forced myself to smile, to laugh along, to join in the small games. But my eyes kept darting to Elijah and the interactions around us. Every glance, every smile, every move from Kami put me on alert. I couldn't tell if she was deliberately testing me or simply struggling with her own feelings. My heart raced, each beat reminding me that I needed to be ready for whatever was about to happen. Ava came over and gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft but full of concern. I sighed and gave her a weak smile. "I'm okay, I guess. Just still unsettled." She nodded, understanding that words weren't enough right now. Just having her there gave me a sense of solid support, an anchor amidst the emotional storm. Suddenly, the door opened and Kami walked back in. I froze, caught off guard. She looked different from when she had left. Her hair loose and messy, her eyes red, and her movements trembling. I knew she had just been through an intense wave of emotion, shame, regret, or feelings she had never confronted before. Everyone in the room sensed the shift, but I noticed the details, the subtle tremor in her hands, the way her gaze flicked nervously. Kami lowered her eyes toward Elijah, her voice shaky. I need to talk to you for a moment." Elijah furrowed his brow, glanced at me, then turned his full attention to Kami. I stood frozen, my pulse quickening. I knew that tonight, nothing would remain hidden. Elijah stepped closer, keeping a careful distance so as not to escalate tension, but his gaze was sharp and unwavering. Kami's head dropped, her hands trembling. Her voice was barely audible, but I could catch every word. I realized that this confrontation would determine everything: trust, feelings, and the dynamics of the relationships around us. Kami started, her voice trembling. I don't know what I was thinking. I felt like maybe I might have been wrong. Elijah listened, eyes serious but not angry. "Say it straight, Kami. I need to hear the truth." His tone was firm and calm, and for a moment, it felt like the entire room had paused. Just the sound of our breaths and my racing heart remained, taking a long breath. Kami confessed, I've had feelings, not for him, but for everything he could have given me, but I never wanted to ruin your friendship or his life. I didn't know how to say it. I stood there, wide-eyed, heart stabbing painfully. I could hear every word, every breath, realizing that Kami was admitting to lingering jealousy, unresolved feelings, or emotions she hadn't been able to control. Elijah exhaled slowly, maintaining his composure. "Kami, I understand. I know your relationship has always been a long-term friendship. But tonight, the way you acted at her bachelorette party made things uncomfortable. I need you to be honest, and you need to understand that honesty is crucial right now." Kami hung her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, compassion, confusion. She was facing Elijah, but I was also facing my own feelings: uncertainty, worry, and the challenge to my trust. Ava moved closer, placing her hand on my shoulder and whispering, "I'm here." "You're not alone," I nodded, taking a deep breath, drawing strength from our friendship. The confrontation continued, every word, every tear, every gesture creating an intense emotional current throughout the room. Kami spoke more clearly now, her voice still trembling but resolute. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt her or you. I didn't know how to control my feelings. I just wanted to be acknowledged, but I did it the wrong way." Elijah stayed calm, eyes locked on Kami, yet I could see a flicker of hurt in his gaze. He paused for a moment, then said, "I understand how that feels, but you need to know that you can't place yourself between us and destroy what we have. I forgive you, but don't let this happen again. I stood there, absorbing every detail, every emotion flowing through the room. I realized Kami was confronting not only Elijah, but herself, and I. I was confronting my own emotions, anxiety, anger, and the test of my trust. The confrontation stretched on, but finally, Kami lowered her head, tears falling, and stepped back from the center. Elijah watched her go, exhaling deeply, then turned to me. I saw reassurance in his eyes, but I also understood that what happened tonight would leave a long-lasting impact. I returned to my seat, sipping my tea, inhaling deeply, and reminded myself, I can get through this. The real challenges are just beginning, but I'll hold my ground. The bachelorette party, once a purely joyous celebration, had now become a delicate emotional trial, where every secret, unspoken feeling, and crucial decision began to surface. I knew, after tonight, nothing would ever be simple again. After the confrontation between Kami and Elijah, the atmosphere in the room felt heavy. Music and laughter still echoed, but I could tell no one was truly enjoying themselves anymore. Everyone seemed sharper, more observant, like they were measuring each other, and the air carried an unspoken tension. I sat quietly, sipping my tea, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside me. My heart was still racing, my breath uneven, and my mind replayed everything, analyzing every detail. Ava sat next to me, lightly squeezing my shoulder, silently reminding me I wasn't alone. Everything will be okay. You just need to stay calm and watch, she whispered. I nodded, but the anxiety didn't completely fade. Part of it came from Kami and the way she handled her emotions. Another part from the lingering questions I couldn't answer yet. Was Kami truly sorry, or were there deeper feelings she hadn't expressed? The answers would shape the future of my relationship with Elijah. Elijah stood at the corner, watching Kami's movements carefully as she left. I noticed a mix of anger and hurt in his eyes. He wasn't mad at me, and he wasn't hiding anything. But I understood that what hurt him most was Kami's behavior and words, especially here at my bachelorette party. He's always protective of me, and naturally, this made him feel betrayed, even though I knew he would never doubt me. When Kami stepped away, a wave of relief briefly washed over me, yet the tension lingered. Friends and family began to notice something was off, exchanging curious glances and hushed whispers. I forced myself to smile, participate in a few games, but inside, I was still uneasy. I realized that everyone around me only saw the surface. They couldn't see the anxiety, anger, or doubt swirling inside me. I decided to pull Ava aside, needing to release some of my emotions. I'm exhausted. Not just because of Kami, but everything tonight, I admitted. Ava looked at me, eyes full of empathy. I know, but you handled it so well. You didn't let yourself get sucked into the drama, and you stayed calm. That's what really matters. Her words warmed me like a comforting light in the cold storm of my emotions. After that, I went to find Elijah. He was standing alone, holding a glass of champagne, eyes staring into the distance. I touched his hand lightly. Hey, I'm okay, but I need to know how you're feeling, I said, my voice shaky but controlled. Elijah looked at me, exhaling slowly, then grasped my hand. I'm okay. Just frustrated that this all happened at the party. But I know it's not your fault, and I trust you. I just need some time to process everything. I looked into his eyes, feeling his gentle, protective presence. and realized that even with Kami or anyone else causing chaos, Elijah's care was unwavering. I felt both reassured and anxious because I knew what happened tonight would have lasting effects. Not just with Kami, but with everyone around us. Even relationships that seemed stable before. Ava stayed close, attentive, making sure I wasn't overwhelmed or alone. We moved through the room together, laughing lightly with friends, joining small games, but in my mind, every action, every word was under careful observation. I knew from now on, nothing would be as simple as before. Every glance, every gesture could reveal something, and I had to stay vigilant. Minutes later, Elijah received a text from Kami, confirming she would reach out after getting home. I felt a mix of relief and tension. I knew this conversation would shape everything, especially whether Kami would attend the wedding. I reminded myself, I need patience. I can't let my emotions take control. But I have to be ready for whatever comes next. As the night went on, I realized I had learned something important. It's not just about staying calm amid drama, but understanding your own emotions, knowing your boundaries, and protecting your happiness. I inhaled deeply, sipped my tea, and observed Elijah, Ava, and the friends around us. I felt that despite the tension and drama, I wasn't alone. There were people who would stand by me, ready to share the weight of my emotions. The bachelorette party, once a purely joyful celebration, had turned into a subtle lesson in trust, patience, and emotional strength. I knew that after tonight, nothing would be simple again, but I also knew I was strong enough to face it all. Every secret, every unspoken feeling was starting to surface, and I was ready to move forward, no matter how difficult the road ahead might be. The morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a warm golden glow across the room, but it didn't ease the heaviness in my chest. Last night's bachelorette party replayed in my mind. Kami's tears, her shaky words, the tension between her and Elijah. I could feel subtle shifts in the way everyone looked at each other, not just at the party but afterward too. Every glance, every movement seemed to remind me that we had entered a new chapter, one where secrets were no longer secrets. I sat on the sofa, sipping my hot tea, trying to sort through the chaos of emotions inside me. My heart was still racing, my hands a little shaky, and my mind kept looping through every scene from last night. Ava came in, bringing with her a sense of calm that I desperately needed. "Did you get any sleep?" she asked gently. I shook my head, sighing. "Not really. I keep replaying last night, and I still feel anxious and angry." Ava smiled, sitting down beside me. "That's normal. You went through a confrontation most people wouldn't have the courage to face. What matters is that you know what you need to do next." We talked for a while, and Ava emphasized that we needed to prepare mentally for Elijah. Kami was going to reach out, and a direct conversation was inevitable. "This conversation will determine a lot, not just the friendship between Elijah and Kami, but also your wedding," she said seriously. I nodded, feeling both worried and tense. I knew if Kami wasn't completely honest, things could spiral out of control. A few hours later, Elijah and I sat down for a more private conversation about last night. He looked at me, his eyes full of sincerity and concern. "I'm not angry at you. I know you had nothing to do with it. But what hurts me is how Kami acted right at your party, with everyone there to support you. I feel betrayed not by you but by her lack of honesty." I took a deep breath, trying to understand the pain in his eyes. It was hard to watch someone I loved hurt, and at the same time, I felt the responsibility to protect our love. Over the next few hours, Elijah and I planned how to handle the upcoming conversation with Comey. We discussed staying calm, insisting on honesty, and making sure emotions didn't get out of control. Elijah was serious. He wanted clarity, and that reassured me while simultaneously making me anxious. I knew that if Comey didn't speak truthfully, the consequences could affect more than just temporary tension. They could impact the wedding, friendships, and my trust in Elijah. Around noon, Elijah suggested we take a walk at the park nearby. The fresh air, birdsong, and soft sunlight helped me relax slightly. We held hands, walking together in silence. This quiet moment wasn't tense at all, it was meaningful. It gave us space to feel connected, sharing emotions words couldn't express. I realized Elijah was consciously regulating his feelings, and I needed to do the same to support him. When everything happened last night, I felt. Elijah hesitated, then exhaled slowly. I felt hurt, but I also feel grateful you stayed calm. I trust you, but we need to deal with this with Comey the right way, without letting emotions take over. I nodded, sensing the maturity and steadiness in him that made me feel safe. He wasn't just protecting me, he was balancing reason and emotion, and that made me admire him even more. Back home, we braced ourselves for Comey's call. When the phone rang, I stood close to Elijah, listening intently. Comey tried to explain, apologizing, admitting the feelings she had been hiding. Her voice trembled, but there was sincerity in it, as if she were finally revealing the parts of herself she had never shared. Elijah stayed calm but firm, insisting on complete honesty and that she take responsibility for her actions. The call was tense and prolonged, but it was also the first step toward clarity. I stood there, heart racing, feeling every second of that tension. After the call, Elijah and I sat together, exhaling deeply, closing our eyes, and feeling a brief wave of relief. I realized that last night's bachelorette party and this morning had marked a turning point. All the hidden emotions and secrets were surfacing, and we had faced them with composure and trust. In the afternoon, I spent time talking with Ava and a few close friends, sharing my feelings and seeking advice. I realized that even though drama still lingered, I was not alone. Ava and my friends were the anchors, helping me understand that patience, honesty, and trust would guide us through any challenge. That evening, as Elijah and I sat together, I told myself, no matter how complicated things get, love and trust are what will keep us standing. We will move forward together, no matter how difficult the road ahead. Later that night, I sat alone, imagining the upcoming wedding. I pictured familiar faces, smiles, and the overwhelming feeling of happiness. But I also knew that everything would only be beautiful if people were truly honest and supportive. I inhaled deeply, closed my eyes, and reminded myself, I am prepared for any challenge. Whatever happens, I will hold on to trust and love. Lying in bed, I felt a fragile but essential sense of relief. The challenges weren't over. Comey still had to face Elijah and confront her own actions. But I knew that Elijah and I were strong enough to get through any drama. Love, trust, and honesty formed our foundation, and we would build our wedding on, our future on those values. That afternoon, the atmosphere in the house felt unbearably heavy. I could sense every breath, every heartbeat, as if time itself was holding its breath. I knew this was the moment Comey would face Elijah. directly a conversation that could determine everything, whether she could be completely honest, or whether things would spiral even further out of control. I stood by the window, staring outside, but all I saw were swaying green leaves, as if even nature was pausing. Waiting with us, Elijah sat in the living room, phone in hand, eyes focused on Commie's messages before the call. I stood nearby, my heart racing faster than ever. "Are you ready?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly despite my effort to stay calm. Elijah looked at me, nodded lightly. "I'm ready. We face this head-on. No avoidance, no pretending." I took a deep breath, trying to bolster both him and myself. When Commie stepped into the house, it felt like the air itself paused. She looked nervous, eyes darting down, but she tried to maintain a composed exterior. The tension was palpable, so much so that even the faint rustling of leaves outside seemed magnified. Elijah stood and walked toward her, his tone calm but firm. "We need to talk. I want everything out in the open." Commie exhaled, gaze fixed on the floor, and began to explain. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I felt confused, and..." Her voice trembled, but there was an unmistakable sincerity there, like she was finally exposing parts of herself she had kept hidden. Elijah listened intently, hands clenched, eyes locked on hers, showing both seriousness and control. I stood nearby, absorbing every word, feeling every ounce of emotion passing between them. The conversation stretched on, intense and raw, filled with admissions, apologies, and emotions that had never been voiced before. Commie admitted that she had once felt something toward Elijah, but it was never real love. She confessed to the confusion and the mistake of expressing those feelings at my bachelorette party. Elijah stayed calm, asking questions, but didn't display anger. He wanted clarity, not theatrics. I could feel the subtle shift in Elijah. He was hurt, yes, but he also showed patience and a desire to understand Commie. "I need the truth, all of it. Nothing left out," he said, his voice calm but unwavering. Commie kept her head down but gradually admitted everything. Even moments of past confusion I had never known about. As the dialogue continued, I experienced a whirlwind of emotions myself. Part of me wanted to be angry at Commie, part of me wanted to shield Elijah, and another part reminded me that we are all human, we make mistakes. I had to breathe deeply, observe, and listen without letting my own emotions dictate the situation. This was a lesson in patience and inner strength. Finally, Commie looked at Elijah, her voice trembling but earnest. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to ruin anything, especially with her and you. I just wanted to be honest and do the right thing." Elijah inhaled deeply, looked her in the eyes, and nodded. "I respect your honesty, but there will be consequences. We need clear boundaries and expectations, and you need to understand that there won't be a second chance." I stood next to them, exhaling, feeling a sense of relief. Everything was out in the open now, and though the tension remained, at least there were no more hidden secrets. Ava stepped forward, lightly touching my shoulder, reminding me that I had handled this well and that I was not alone. Afterward, Elijah invited Commie and Antonio, the friend often mentioned, whose relationship with Commie had raised questions, to sit down and clarify everything. We all sat together, listening, analyzing each word, making sure every detail was clear. This wasn't just a conversation about feelings. It was a lesson in trust, honesty, and how to handle complex relationships responsibly. The whole afternoon passed in a mix of tension and seriousness. I learned to listen without jumping to judgment, to feel others' emotions while maintaining my own boundaries. Elijah showed calmness, strength, and the ability to protect love, while Carmi faced consequences and had to own her actions. I realized this was one of the most crucial moments before the wedding, when all secrets were revealed, and everyone had to stand in the truth of their emotions. When the conversation ended, Elijah and I sat together, exhaling, eyes closed, letting a small wave of relief wash over us. I looked into his eyes and saw a mix of relief and lingering tension. We held hands, knowing that love and trust would help us navigate any challenges, even as more drama and complex emotions were sure to come in the days ahead. That night, I sat alone, imagining our upcoming wedding. I pictured familiar faces, smiles, and overwhelming joy. But I also knew that the celebration would only be beautiful if everyone was truly honest and supportive. I inhaled deeply, closed my eyes, and reminded myself, I am prepared for any challenge. No matter what happens, I will hold on to trust and love. And for me, this was a critical step toward a wedding that would be not only spectacular on the surface, but emotionally solid where love, trust, and honesty were at the heart of everything. The next morning, sunlight still streamed through the windows, but the feeling in the house was completely different. It wasn't the heavy, suffocating tension from yesterday, it was a thoughtful, reflective kind of silence. Everyone seemed to be trying to process their emotions, and I could sense clearly that things would never be the same. Secrets had been revealed, and their consequences were already shaping the relationships around us. Elijah entered the room, his eyes still holding a trace of tension, but calmer than before. Last night, everything is clearer now, but there's still work to do, he said. I nodded, knowing he was right. We had to face not just Komi, but the emotional fallout, the unspoken feelings, and the cracks that honesty had only just begun to repair. After yesterday's confrontation with Elijah, Kami looked somewhat relieved, but still anxious. She admitted her actions caused tension, and she genuinely wanted to make things right. Yet, I could see her uncertainty and lack of confidence, especially standing there with both Elijah and me present. I knew Kami was still struggling with guilt and trying to find a balance in her relationships. But that balance could only come if she remained truthful. Meanwhile, Elijah started untangling the web of relationships, particularly between Kami and Antonio. He decided to invite Antonio over to clarify everything, ensuring there were no lingering doubts or feelings of being used. The meeting was tense but necessary. It wasn't just about understanding the situation. It was also an opportunity for Elijah to witness Kami's honesty or lack thereof firsthand. I watched from a distance, taking in every moment, the avoided eye contact, the nervous words, the forced smiles. I realized the drama wasn't over, but at least now everything was transparent. Unspoken feelings, doubts, and worries were coming out one by one, and I had to confront my own whirlwind of emotions. Part of me wanted to be angry at Kami, part of me wanted to protect Elijah, and another part reminded me that everyone makes mistakes. I had to breathe deeply, observe, and listen without letting my emotions take over. In the afternoon, I sat down with Ava to talk about my feelings. I feel both relieved and exhausted, I admitted. Ava smiled and listened carefully. That's completely normal. When big drama hits, you'll experience many emotions at once. The important thing is that you're still standing and keeping your head clear. I nodded, feeling the truth in her words. Truly, the support of friends was invaluable in this moment. Meanwhile, Elijah continued addressing Kami and Antonio, listening carefully to every word. Kami admitted she had felt confused about her emotions toward Elijah, but she never intended to hurt or manipulate anyone. Antonio confirmed he had not been used and simply wanted clarity. I felt the tension in every second, yet also recognized the maturity in the way everyone faced the truth. When the meeting ended, Elijah and I sat together, exhaling deeply. I realized we had reached a crucial turning point. All secrets had been spoken, all doubts clarified, and at least now we knew who was honest and who needed time to make things right. I felt some relief, but I also understood the drama wasn't completely over. Everyone still had to face their own emotions. That evening, sitting alone in my room, I thought about the upcoming wedding. I realized it wasn't just about people being honest. It was about mutual respect and genuine intentions in every action. I looked at Elijah and saw determination and protection in his eyes, and I reminded myself that we would get through every challenge, even as more tension and hidden drama were bound to emerge in the coming days. By the end of the day, I felt I had grown in handling stressful situations, learning to listen, observe, and balance my emotions. I understood that drama was never the end. It was a turning point for everyone to confront the truth, take responsibility, and value what mattered most: love, trust, and honesty. For me, this was a defining moment. The wedding wouldn't just be a beautiful day. It would be proof of how we overcame challenges, protected our love, and built our future on trust and sincerity. The next day, the tension from the previous conversations still hung in the house like a faint shadow. I woke up early, before the sun had fully risen, and sat by the window with a steaming cup of coffee. Outside, the sky was clear, soft morning light spilling across the garden, but inside my mind, everything felt restless. Every detail from the past days replayed vividly. Kami avoiding eye contact, her nervous words that seemed to wobble between apology and uncertainty, Antonio's quiet attempts to explain himself, and Elijah's calm yet commanding presence. I sipped my coffee slowly, trying to steady my thoughts. I have to stay calm. This isn't just about today. This is a turning point before the wedding. Everything we do now sets the tone for what comes next. Elijah entered the room shortly after, his eyes still sharp with determination, though a hint of fatigue lingered. He moved over to sit beside me, dropping his hand on mine with that quiet reassurance he always offered. "Last night was an important step," he said, voice steady, "but I don't think this is fully over. We still need to address the fallout and set clear boundaries with Kami." I nodded, knowing he was right. This wasn't just about personal drama or emotions. It was about protecting our future, our wedding, and the fragile trust we had worked so hard to build. After a short while, Kami and Antonio were invited over to clarify lingering misunderstandings. The moment we all sat together, the air seemed to thrum with quiet tension. Kami shifted nervously, wringing her hands, then met Elijah's gaze briefly before looking away again. "I've been confused about my feelings," she admitted softly, "but I never wanted to hurt or manipulate anyone. I was lost, and I made mistakes." Antonio nodded beside her, his expression calm but sincere. "I didn't feel used," he said. "I just wanted everything to be transparent. That's all." As they spoke, I couldn't help but notice every subtle gesture, the fleeting eye contact, the small nervous shifts of their bodies, the forced smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. And yet, despite all the awkwardness, there was something different this time. The truth was finally out in the open. The drama wasn't over. It never really fully disappears, but at least everyone had to confront reality and take responsibility for their actions. I felt a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. Relief, because things were finally said aloud. Apprehension, because honesty didn't erase emotions instantly. While the meeting continued, my own emotions swirled like a storm. Part of me wanted to feel anger toward Comey. Part of me wanted to shield Elijah from even the tiniest hint of hurt. And yet another part of me reminded myself that everyone makes mistakes and everyone deserves a chance to grow. I reminded myself to breathe, to observe, and to listen carefully without letting my feelings dictate my reactions. This wasn't just about others. It was a lesson in patience, emotional control, and the challenges of navigating complex human relationships. Hours passed, filled with pauses, clarifying questions, and careful explanations. By the time the meeting drew to a close, a sense of cautious understanding had settled over the group. Elijah and I sat together afterward, leaning against the sofa, silent for a few moments. I noticed the faint trace of relief in his eyes, though some tension remained. "We've cleared up a lot," he said finally, "but we'll have to see how they act going forward. Clarity is one thing, but actions are what truly matter." I nodded, knowing he was right. Drama doesn't simply vanish because words are spoken. It waits for the slightest spark if honesty, respect, and boundaries aren't upheld. Later that afternoon, I met with Ava to process everything. Her presence was a bomb, a grounding force that reminded me to step back and take care of my own emotions. "I feel both relieved and completely drained," I admitted. Ava smiled knowingly and placed a hand over mine. "That's completely normal. Big drama hits like a roller coaster. You experience highs, lows, and everything in between. The key is to stay grounded and clear-headed." I nodded, appreciating her words. In moments like these, the support of friends isn't just comforting, it's a lifeline. That evening, I sat alone in my room, staring into the distance and imagining the upcoming wedding. I pictured the smiles on our friends' faces, the soft laughter filling the air, the joy and light radiating from every corner. But I also knew that the day would only be beautiful if everyone involved remained honest, respectful, and kind. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, whispering to myself, "I'm ready for any challenge. No matter what happens, I will hold on to trust and love. Nothing else matters more than that." This moment felt pivotal. The wedding wouldn't just be a spectacular day filled with flowers, music, and decorations. It would be the proof of how we had navigated challenges, protected our love, and built a future rooted in honesty and trust. I realized, more deeply than ever, that drama isn't the end of a story. It's an opportunity for growth. It's a mirror that shows what needs to be faced, what needs to be learned, and how relationships can be strengthened when people confront truth and responsibility. All through the night, I remained lost in thought. I pictured every detail, friends exchanging glances, laughter echoing across the room, the simple joy of being surrounded by those we loved. Yet beneath those visions, I knew the drama wasn't fully gone. Some feelings were still unresolved, some tensions still lingered. Elijah and I would need patience, composure, and unwavering trust to guide everyone toward the peace and clarity we hoped for. Finally, as the night deepened and the house grew quiet, I closed my eyes and let myself breathe fully. I reminded myself, I've grown from these past days. I have learned to face every challenge. Love, honesty, and trust will always be our strongest foundation, and nothing can shake that if we hold on to it together. The house was silent, but my mind was alive with reflection and determination. I felt ready not just for the wedding, but for everything that lay ahead. Drama might arise, misunderstandings might appear, but the lessons we had learned, the growth we had achieved, and the trust we had built would guide us. I was ready to embrace the future, to step forward with courage, love, and unwavering clarity. That day began with a strange mix of heaviness and peace. After all the intense conversations, heartfelt confessions, and even Komi's tears, everyone seemed to be facing their emotions head-on. I could feel that this was the final turning point before the wedding where all secrets, doubts, and tension had to be fully resolved. There was a quiet weight in the air, a sense that something important was about to shift, and that, after today, nothing would ever be quite the same. Early in the morning, I woke up feeling both anxious and relieved. Sunlight streamed softly through the curtains, but it did little to calm my racing mind. Elijah walked into the room, his eyes determined but noticeably calmer than the day before. Today is the day we make everything clear. No more doubts, no more hidden agendas, he said. I nodded silently, telling myself to stay calm and strong. This was the moment to prove everything we'd learned about trust, honesty, and forgiveness, not just in words, but in the way we acted, observed, and responded. Cami and Antonio were invited one last time to address any unresolved issues. As they entered the room, I noticed the tension in their eyes, but also a sincerity I hadn't seen before. Elijah started the conversation, his voice calm but firm. We're going to lay everything out clearly and directly. Every action, every feeling will be acknowledged. This is your chance to speak honestly. Kami took a deep breath, her voice shaky but sincere. I'm sorry for everything. I let my emotions take over my judgment and caused tension. I truly want to make things right, she admitted. Antonio added, I never meant to cause trouble. It was all a misunderstanding. I just want everyone to understand. The conversation went on for hours, but this time it felt different. There was no avoidance, no hidden agendas. Everyone knew they had to be honest and direct. Elijah listened carefully, sometimes nodding, sometimes staying silent to give Kami and Antonio the space to fully express themselves. I observed every subtle gesture, every shift of emotion, the way Kami bit her lip when embarrassed, the slight tremor in Antonio's hands, the tension that seemed to pulse through the room when difficult topics were addressed. I could feel their vulnerability, their regret, and even their growth, mirrored in their words. When the discussion finally ended, Elijah looked at Kami and Antonio, calm but serious. We've said everything. From now on, you need to be honest and respect boundaries. Every action going forward will determine how we continue, he said. Kami and Antonio nodded, fully aware of their responsibilities. The relief in the room was palpable, but I also knew that the work wasn't entirely over. Trust would have to be earned again through consistent actions. Afterward, Elijah and I sat down together. I could see relief filling his eyes, but some tension lingered like a shadow that hadn't completely faded. Everything is clear. The drama is resolved, I said. Now we can focus on our wedding and our future. He smiled, pulled me into his arms, and for the first time in days, I felt real peace. It was a quiet, profound moment, one that reminded me how far we'd come, how much we'd endured, and how deeply we had both grown. That afternoon, I went for my final wedding dress fitting. The room was flooded with soft sunlight, reflecting off mirrors and sequins, turning the space into a dreamlike world. Looking at myself in the mirror, I took a deep breath and smiled. I thought back to everything, the secrets, the misunderstandings, the emotional challenges, and realized that each trial had made me stronger, more resilient, and ready for this new chapter of life. Elijah stood beside me, holding my hand, his eyes full of love, pride, and protective warmth. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. "We've overcome every challenge, and now all that's left is joy, love, and happiness." I nodded, letting his words sink in, feeling love radiate in every fiber of my being. That evening, we hosted a small dinner with family and close friends. The atmosphere was light, warm, and joyful. No drama, no misunderstandings. People laughed freely, shared stories, and celebrated our upcoming wedding with us. I looked around at the faces of those I loved, seeing warmth, happiness, and support, and felt a profound sense of peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. Every smile, every gentle touch, every quiet glance reminded me that love, honesty, and trust were the foundation of everything we had worked so hard to protect. As night fell, I sat alone in my room, staring at the starry sky. I reflected on the past weeks, the struggles, the tears, the intense conversations, and the personal growth that had come from facing these challenges. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and told myself, I've learned the value of honesty, trust, and love. No matter what challenges come, Elijah and I will face them together. The next day, Elijah and I spent quiet, unhurried time together. We walked through the nearby park, laughing softly, reminiscing about joyful moments, and reflecting on the obstacles we had overcome. Each conversation, each shared glance, seemed to strengthen our bond even more. I realized that these quiet moments of reflection were just as important as the dramatic confrontations. They reminded us why we were together and why every challenge was worth facing. Over the next few days, we focused on the final wedding preparations, checking guest lists, confirming details with vendors, and personally connecting with friends and family to ensure everyone felt comfortable and understood. I also took time to speak with Kami privately. She expressed genuine gratitude for the chance to clarify everything, and promised to maintain appropriate boundaries moving forward. Listening to her, I could sense her sincerity, and I felt a sense of closure that went deeper than words. Finally, the day before the wedding arrived, I sat quietly, taking in the calm before the celebration. The tension of the past weeks had finally lifted, replaced with anticipation, love, and a deep sense of gratitude. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered to myself, I've grown. I've learned to face any challenge. Our wedding will be proof of love, honesty, and unwavering trust. Drama has ended, and now it's time to embrace true happiness. And that was the conclusion of a story filled with emotion, drama, and growth. The wedding wouldn't just be beautiful, it would be a living testament to everything we had endured and overcome together. Every smile, every word, every shared moment would reflect the lessons we had learned, the trust we had built, and the love we had fought to protect. The chapter of drama had closed, and the chapter of true happiness, grounded in patience, understanding, and sincerity, was only just beginning.